Good morning. Super great to see you. Before we get started, I always scroll through to look at faces and names. It's just a great opportunity to get to see some faces and names with everybody today. Before we get started talking about our topic, if you haven't had an opportunity to read the email that was sent by Director Garcia yesterday, please make sure that you do read that email. It is a very clear email that shows her level of support of the extremely difficult work that this team does on a regular basis, on an everyday basis. If you didn't see the article that was in the Des Moines Register yesterday, it was a rough one. It was not accurate, but it was a story that someone wanted to tell. And it's unfortunate that things happen that way. But it was really great to get that email from Director Garcia and show all of you that level of support and belief in the work that is happening in the CPS team every single day. So I just want to make sure you are aware that it's in your inbox if you haven't seen it. So please take some time to read that. I want to thank you all you're welcome, Nikki, Enderly. Absolutely. You guys always have my support. You always do. I want to thank Paige Castile, Nikki Sims, Stephanie Clark, and Melissa Clifton for putting together this presentation for today on adoption selection staffings. As you know, this is one of the places where we make an extremely difficult decision at times. Sometimes it can be easy, and other times it's just not easy. And when it's not easy, we are faced with additional challenges in the work that we do. And I think today is going to be a very good opportunity to kind of refresh our memories on how we move forward on adoption selection, have an opportunity to ask some questions from those that are presenting, and myself. They're truly the experts in this adoption selection process, which is why you get to hear from them today. So I will turn it over to this team to get us going on this topic.
Thank you, Lori. So good morning. As Lori stated, we're going to be discussing adoption selection staffings today. My name is Stephanie Clark. I am the Adoption Program Manager in the Policy Bureau. So on the agenda today, what we're looking to accomplish is an overview of the changes to the Iowa adoption selection process, the role of the ongoing supervisor in SWCM, the importance and expectations regarding relative notices, and a review of documentation updates and their role in the appeal process. So we're going to do a little poll here. Have you ever participated in an adoption selection staffing? So as our results here, it looks like 60% of the folks on the call have never participated in an adoption selection process. 36% of you have, and 4% of you have asked, what is an adoption selection staffing? So hopefully we can get that answer for you today. So Iowa Code 200.43 gives HHS the authority as guardian to select an adoptive home. And I'm going to pass it on to Paige now.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Paige Castile, and I'm a social work administrator in Cedar Rapids service area, and I oversee the adoption unit here. So we're going to talk about the key motivations for process change. We wanted to look at and improve our process because adoption selection is one of the most important decisions that we make as we're selecting a forever home for a child or children. The selection decision is also not just the responsibility of the adoption unit. Ongoing workers have a huge impact on the selection decision. And decisions should be made in the best interest of children above all else. So in June of 2024, a work group came together and we met to review the adoption selection process with a focus on the adoption selection summary. And this is the form that we use to document our selection decision. And the previous summary only addressed the strengths and needs of the selected family and did not clearly explain why we selected one family over another when there were multiple families to consider. So that was one of the main reasons that we started this group, is to look at that form. The work group received input and guidance from the AG, and this was important because we wanted to enhance the transparency in HHS decision-making during the selection process, and wanted to make sure that we address problematic issues on conflict cases where we have AG representation, as well as for appeals and issues that have come up during appeals. The work group also looked at implementing enhanced and focused internal reviews of concurrent plans. This was, as we all know, concurrent planning throughout the life of the case is essential. To help inform our changes, we reviewed many appellate orders involving removing HHS as guardian. We wanted to see why we were being removed as guardians on some cases, as well as why in other cases we were being upheld as guardian. And some of the common themes that we noticed were that appellate orders often noted relative notices not being sent out or relatives not being identified early on. That was a big issue throughout a lot of the orders that we reviewed. The orders also noted support of HHS when children are placed with siblings above all other relationships. So that was very important to note. In many cases, relatives were identified, but children were not moved timely or moved quickly without appropriate transition planning. And relatives who live a distance away was an identified issue due to reunification efforts. And the orders said that we clearly needed to document our efforts in these situations to establish and maintain these connections to relatives. Orders noted that documentation of the concurrent plan and updates throughout the life of the case was often lacking. The standard that the court looked at throughout these orders was whether decisions made by HHS were thoughtful, reasonable, and in the child's best interest. So revisions to the adoption selection process. This was implemented in December of 2024, and the process involves using statewide standardization of prospective family interview questions. So asking all families the same questions. And then the adoption selection summary form was redesigned, and no changes were made to the single family path selection process. Guiding principles were reviewed and utilized in looking at revisions. And the guiding principles in the adoption selection process are that we value the best interest of the child or children at all times. That's number one. Family selection is based on an assessment of each child's needs and how that family will meet that child's needs. And that the child or children's need for family connections will be valued, and separation of siblings should be avoided whenever possible. Placement priority. This section was actually added into the selection summary form so that all committee members are reviewing this when making a selection decision. And this is outlined in Iowa Code 232.117 that I think many of you have all seen before. The placement priority, which is an adult relative of the child or children, including but not limited to adult siblings or parents of siblings. Fictive kin, defined as an adult person who's not related to the family by blood or marriage, but who has an emotionally significant relationship with the child or the children's biological family, or a child placing agency or other suitable private agency authorized to receive or care for a child. So now we'll talk about the adoption pathways. First is the single family pathway. That's when there's only one family with an approved adoption or interstate compact home study. And this process is an internal selection process involving the adoption worker, at least one other adoption worker, and the adoption supervisor. No interviews are required, but the adoption summary selection is still completed. The other path is the multiple family path. This is when we have more than one family that is being considered. So all interested families with an approved adoption or interstate compact home study are offered interviews, and the same set of questions are used for each family. So with the multi-family adoption selection, this is what we're going to more focus on today, because that's where the changes were made in this process. When there's more than one family being interviewed, the selection committee will consist of the assigned adoption worker and at least one other adoption worker, the adoption supervisor, and the prior ongoing social work case manager if they're still employed at HHS. This was a change to the process that rolled out in December, as previously the social work case manager was asked for input but was not a required member of the team. Because of what happens with concurrent planning throughout the life of the case and how that impacts the adoption selection decision, we felt it was very important for the ongoing worker to be a part of that selection process. And that was one of the reasons for doing the poll today, is just to see how many, since the process rolled out, how many of you had been able to attend a selection. Optional members of the committee are the social work administrator. We often get pulled in on those difficult and contentious cases to sit in on some of these selections. The prior ongoing supervisor is also an optional member and often sits in. The GAL, they may participate in the interviews and they can also provide input, but it's important to note that they are not an official member of the committee and they do not participate in deliberations or selection. And also to note is that everybody who's involved in the process needs to commit to the entire process, to interview every family and be involved from beginning to end. Consensus decision. A lot of us are used to making decisions by like a vote or a majority, and really a consensus decision is not a vote. The result of the adoption selection process is the selection of the family to adopt the child or children, and how we reach that is through negotiation and compromise, that we discuss any disagreements and debate those disagreements. And the final decision is made when the committee comes to a general agreement on the decision. A question that we sometimes ask ourselves is, can everyone be okay with this decision and live with this decision? Because many times when there are multiple families, there may be more than one family who's appropriate to adopt, but we're looking at which is the best match for this specific child or children that will last forever for this child. So now I'm going to turn things over to Nikki to talk about family finding.
Thanks, Paige. Good afternoon. A little bit about family finding. As we continue to embrace and enhance our practice, elevating a kinship-first culture, we need to review the importance of family finding. Family finding is the intentional practice of diligently identifying and locating appropriate adult connections, creating opportunities to increase relative and kin relationships, earnestly identifying options for placement, and eliminating barriers so children have the least amount of trauma by remaining in the care of trusted caretakers. Family finding empowers families as each member can contribute to supporting the child, even if they're not able to be an option for placement. What we found kind of working through this process is family members aren't typically lost. However, parents may be hesitant to provide names, and relative contact information may be difficult to locate. Not concentrating efforts and time to this practice can result in a lack of timely notice to relatives or fictive kin, which can delay and even disrupt the permanency for children in our youth and care. Family finding should start prior to removal when possible, to increase the initial placements with the caretaker the child has an established connection with. However, family finding is not a one-time act after placement with the relative. Rather, it's a mindset of practice throughout the case to maximize engaging the family and community to support the child and their need to maintain meaningful connections. As a reminder, concurrent planning staffings are intentional junctures to review progress in the identification, location, and engagement of family and community connections for the child. The concurrent planning documentation is reviewed by the Adoption Selection Committee and can impact a decision-making during the multifamily selection process. What I do want to note is family finding is not just sending relative notices, but relative notices are a critical component of family finding. They serve as an official notification that a child they may have a connection to has come into the care of HHS and would benefit from our support. While this may be placement, it can also include visiting the child, taking time to call or text with the child, recognizing the child on holidays or birthdays, attending school functions, sports, or extracurricular activities, assisting with visitation or transportation, providing respite, and possibly contributing to a scrapbook or life book for the child to have. As a reminder, Iowa Code requires relative notices be provided to the child's grandparents, aunts, uncles, adult siblings, parents of the child's siblings, and adult relatives suggested by the child's parents within 30 days of removal. This includes parents of the child's siblings that have been adopted. A parent whose parental rights were previously terminated to a child placed back in HHS custody is also entitled to a relative notice as the parent of siblings if they have biological siblings in their care. Relatives and fictive kin identified past 30 days should also be provided a timely notice, even if the child is already in a relative or fictive kin placement. Melissa, next to you.
Thank you, Nikki. Hi, I'm Melissa Clifton. I'm the social work supervisor for the adoption unit in the Cedar Rapids service area. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the documentation redesign that was implemented. So Form 4705615 is the adoption family interview questions. The family interview questions are a standardized set of questions for each interested family that is being interviewed. During the interviews, a scribe will be identified prior to the interviews that will take the official notes during the interview. These notes will be uploaded into Jarvis. The adoption selection committee members may take their own notes during the interview, but after the official notes are completed by the scribe, all other notes will be destroyed. Form 4700774 is the adoption selection summary. The adoption selection summary was redesigned in order for the committee members to show their work and clearly document the decision that was made by the team. It is used in both single family and multiple family paths, and in multiple family cases, this form makes the decision much clearer as to how the selected family can meet the needs of the child or children above other families interviewed. The assigned adoption worker will complete the adoption selection summary form and send it to all committee members upon completion. Each member should review the form for accuracy and ensure that it reflects the notes taken during the interviews. After review of the summary, all adoption selection committee members will send an email noting their consensus with the decision. The adoption selection summary will then be uploaded into Jarvis. As a reminder, it is important that the selection summary accurately reflects the notes taken, as your notes will be destroyed and you will not be able to look at them later. You may be asked to testify as to the reasoning behind your selection. So that is why it is important that the adoption selection summary is accurate and includes all information from all members of the committee. So the adoption selection summary is 3 pages long. And it goes through well, pretty much what we said, how each family would meet the needs of the children, and the specific needs of the child or children that we are discussing. And now we are opening it up to anybody that may have any questions.
Real quick before we start in with the questions, be sure to raise your hand and ask your question because it does get a little crazy when questions land in the chat, as you guys know. I do want to just give a shout out to these 4 ladies for stepping up to the plate and doing this presentation today, as well as everybody else who has done that on these back to basics. It's been really great to have other leaders in the agency sharing their professionalism and their expertise in different topic areas and help lead these conversations. So thank you guys for doing this today. And those of you who have come before you,